The phone slipped from Michael's fingers, hitting the carpet with a soft thud. His body went cold as the messages burned into his mind. "I miss you. Last night was unforgettable. When can I see you again?" Words meant for his wife, but not from him. The room seemed to tilt sideways as Lisa stood frozen in the doorway, her face as white as the walls behind her. "Who is he?" Michael's voice came out strangled, barely recognizable. Lisa's eyes dropped to the floor. Her silence told him everything. Michael never thought he'd be the husband whose wife cheated. He'd done everything right, worked hard at the firm, bought the house in the good school district, never missed a bill payment. He was the model husband, the provider, the rock. Or so he thought. Now, 3 days after finding those messages, he sat alone in his car outside their home, unable to go inside. He'd been sleeping at his brother's place, ignoring Lisa's calls and texts. The image of those messages kept flashing in his mind like a neon sign. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. How could she do this to him? To them? 15 years of marriage thrown away for what? Some excitement? Some attention? The thought of Lisa with someone else made him physically sick. He finally gathered enough strength to enter the house. Lisa was sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red and swollen. She looked smaller somehow, like she'd shrunk in the past few days. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You could start with why," Michael said, keeping his distance. "Why wasn't I enough?" "It wasn't about you not being enough," Lisa said, her voice cracking. "It was about me feeling like I didn't exist." Michael laughed bitterly. "So you found someone who made you feel real by destroying our marriage. Great solution." "I know I messed up," Lisa said. "I know I hurt you in the worst way possible, but our marriage was broken long before I met him." "Don't you dare blame me for your choices," Michael snapped. "I'm not," Lisa said. "The affair was my mistake, 100%, but the distance between us, that's on both of us." The distance had grown so gradually that neither of them noticed it until it was too big to ignore. It started with small things: Michael working later, Lisa stopping her attempts to connect, both of them retreating to separate corners of the house each night. Michael remembered the early days of their marriage, how Lisa would dance around the kitchen while cooking dinner, how they'd stay up talking about everything and nothing. When had they stopped talking? When had they become two strangers sharing a mortgage? His job at the law firm had taken more and more of his time. Each promotion meant longer hours, more stress, bigger expectations. He'd convinced himself it was all for them, for their future. But somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten about their present. Lisa had tried to reach him. He saw that now. The date nights he was too tired for. The new dress he barely noticed. The hand on his shoulder that he shrugged off because he was busy checking emails. Each rejection pushed her further away until someone else's attention filled the gap. "His name is David," Lisa said during their first counseling session. "He works in marketing at my company. It started with just talking. He noticed things about me, when I got a haircut, when I seemed sad. Small things that made me feel seen." Michael flinched at each word, but forced himself to listen. "We had lunch a few times, then drinks after work, then..." Lisa's voice trailed off. "How long?" Michael asked, the question he'd been dreading. 3 months, she answered, not meeting his eyes. 3 months of lies. 3 months of betrayal. The counselor watched them carefully, noting the pain etched on both their faces. "Lisa, why do you think you were vulnerable to this attention?" the counselor asked. Lisa took a deep breath. "I've felt invisible in my own home for years. Michael and I stopped connecting. We stopped touching. We stopped seeing each other. I know it doesn't excuse what I did, but I was so lonely. I couldn't breathe sometimes. Michael wanted to argue, to defend himself, but the truth in her words stopped him. When was the last time he'd really looked at his wife? When was the last time they'd had a conversation that wasn't about bills or schedules? "Michael, what are you feeling right now?" the counselor prompted. "Angry, hurt, betrayed." He paused. "And guilty, because I think I understand how she felt." Healing didn't happen overnight. For weeks, Michael swung between rage and grief. He'd wake up remembering what happened and feel the pain all over again. Some nights, he'd sleep in the guest room because lying next to Lisa was too painful. Lisa ended the affair completely. She switched apartments at work to avoid David. She gave Michael access to her phone, her email, her schedule, anything to prove she was committed to rebuilding trust. But trust, once broken, is hard to repair. "I keep seeing them together in my head," Michael admitted during their 5th counseling session. "I can't stop the images." "That's normal," the counselor assured him. "What matters is what you do with those thoughts." What Michael did was start to look inward. He began to examine his role in their broken marriage. Not to excuse Lisa's affair, nothing could excuse that, but to understand the cracks that had formed between them. He started coming home earlier. At first, it was awkward. They moved around each other like cautious dancers, afraid to step on toes. But slowly, they relearned how to share space. Lisa fought her own battles, against shame, against the fear that Michael would never forgive her, against the worry that one mistake had cost her everything. "I hate what I did," she told him one night, as they sat on opposite ends of the couch. "But I'm not sure I would have seen how bad things were if it hadn't happened." Michael nodded slowly. "I think I was hiding in my work. It was easier than admitting we were drifting apart." It was the most honest conversation they'd had in years. 6 months after discovering the affair, Michael came home to find Lisa cooking dinner. Not the quick functional meals they'd gotten used to, but his favorite pasta dish that took hours to prepare, the one she used to make when they were first married. "What's this for?" he asked. "No reason," she said. "I just wanted to." They ate dinner together at the table instead of in front of the TV. They talked about their days. Michael told her about a difficult case at work, and Lisa actually listened. She told him about her ideas for repainting the living room, and he gave his honest opinion. It was simple, normal, but it felt like a breakthrough. Later that night, Michael reached for her hand across the bed. It was the first time he'd initiated touch in months. Lisa's fingers intertwined with his, and they lay there, connected by that small bridge. "I'm still angry sometimes," he admitted into the darkness. "I know," she said. "You have every right to be." "But I don't want to lose us," he continued. "I don't want this to be our whole story." Lisa squeezed his hand. "Neither do I." A year after the affair, they went away for a weekend, not to escape their problems, but to celebrate their progress. The hotel was nothing fancy, but it was by the ocean, a place they both loved. They walked on the beach, the sand cool beneath their feet. The conversation flowed easier now. They'd done the hard work of excavating their pain, of examining the patterns that had led them astray. "Do you think we'll ever get past it completely?" Lisa asked as they watched the waves. Michael thought carefully before answering. "I don't think it's about getting past it. I think it's about growing around it. Like a tree that's been struck by lightning, but keeps growing." That night, as they lay together, the intimacy between them felt different, deeper somehow. Not because they'd forgotten what happened, but because they'd faced it head on and chosen each other anyway. 2 years later, at their kitchen table, Michael watched Lisa laugh at something their neighbor had said during dinner. Her head tilted back, her whole face lit up. He was struck by how much he still loved this woman, not despite their broken places, but somehow because of them. They had rebuilt something stronger in the ruins of what they'd lost. The affair would always be part of their history. There were still days when insecurity crept in, when old doubts resurfaced, but those moments no longer defined them. What defined them was the work they put in every day, the choice to see each other, to listen, to be present in the small moments that make up a life together. That night, Michael left a note on Lisa's pillow before going to brush his teeth. "Thank you for fighting for us, when it would have been easier to walk away." When he returned, Lisa was holding the note, tears in her eyes. She didn't need to say anything. The space between them, once vast and empty, now held everything that mattered. Share your thoughts about this story in the comments section, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more exciting stories from the heart of Africa.